Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is Cammy Bell. I am your host on your extra show for this week. And joining me on what I think will be a fairly sweary pod, I think is a fair summation, is my very good friend Colin McMillan. Colin, thank you very much for coming on. This is going to be a tough one, but unlike the Rangers team, we never stop.
No, we don't. And if it's a sweary one, it'll all be on your side of things. I don't swear on extra because my mum listens to this one. So you won't get any sweary words from me, no matter how much they are probably merited tonight, Cammy. They absolutely are. We've got a lot to say, and I'm not going to enjoy saying any of it. But yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, and listeners, normally what happens is that if we're playing on a Tuesday, Wednesday, I'll try and bring out Thursday for extra, recording it in the afternoon because I want a little bit of time to calm down. However, I've decided that I'm actually too angry from what I've seen from Rangers' performance across in Belgium to wait because I think this has to be from the heart. I think it has to be honest, and I think it has to be emotive. And quite frankly, Rangers don't deserve my patience at the moment. So we're recording it pretty much straight after the final whistle. As Rangers, it was just an absolute collapse within, halfway through the first half, and finished 6-0 on the night, 9-1 on aggregate across the tie. And Colin, I will be 45 in December. I've got a few years on you. And as the game was unfolding / collapsing, there was a part of me that was thinking I would struggle to be able to put a comparable in terms of such a dismal, weak, pathetic, unprofessional performance on a European stage from Rangers. And we have been spoilt for riches in recent history in terms of our performances in Europe and how far we've been able to get to. However, tonight against Bruges was absolutely none of that. And there is a very, very bitter taste in my mouth in terms of what I saw unfold. And it was, again, like I say, everything that could have went wrong. And we'll unpack that. We're going to talk a little bit, obviously, about the Old Firm game at the weekend because, how can you not? But what's been your takeaway, having had a little bit of time to digest it?
So I'll be 41 in October, and I got put it up there with as bad as it gets on the European stage, potentially on any stage. If you take away probably the time in our lives where we thought we weren't going to have a football club anymore. Other than that, I think this is pretty much as low or as bad as it gets watching them, Cammy. We remember the 90s, we remember going to Ajax, we remember going to Juventus and getting turned over by world-class teams with world-class players. Even a couple of seasons ago, going to Anfield and getting a doing off a very, very, very good Liverpool side. This Bruges side is good, but it's not to the levels of those teams. And we made them look like those teams tonight because we just didn't show up. We didn't do the basics right. We didn't look interested. We didn't look capable of passing a ball, capable of tracking back. Our defence didn't look capable of talking to each other. And we made a silly mistake right from the start where our left back gave away a daft yellow card. And that kind of set the tone for me. We then lost a silly early goal. We then got a red card, which was another calamitous thing to happen from a guy that looked like he chucked it. And then it just got from worse to worse to worse. There was no recovery. There was no standing up and being counted. There was no, right, okay, something bad's happened. Let's try and fix it. Let's not fall apart. But we did. We just absolutely fell apart. And there's a lack of accountability. There's a lack of leadership. There's a lack of seemingly even basic ability across that whole squad at the moment. And they're not listening to the manager. They're obviously not taking on what he's telling them. They're either choosing to not do that or they're incapable of doing that, or he's incapable of getting that message across and getting these players to do what he wants them to do. The manager needs to go now, and I can't believe I'm on one of these shows saying that on the 27th of August. I think I've been probably more patient than most, Cammy, in terms of the manager and wanting to give him time and give him opportunities, because I know we're in this cycle at the moment of changing manager repeatedly. And you know what? It hasn't done us any favours keeping changing the manager. So I did want us to get somebody, stick with them, give them some time. But when you do that and you take a bit of the rough to get to the smooth, you've got to see some semblance of that smooth starting to appear. There's got to be some shoots of progress. There's got to be some indicators that things are going to get better, and you can see a plan. You can see things starting to grow. There's been nothing of that with 45 minutes in Europe against Payson, and that is basically it from 10 games, is it? 10 competitive games, is it now? Or 11 competitive, whatever it may be. It's just not good enough. And we've had some doings off Celtic, we've had doings in Europe and stuff like that. But to go into this season so full of confidence, go in the new regime, we kind of got everything we wanted, didn't we? New football department, new management team. Might not be the exact management team we all wanted, but we needed a change. We got the new owners. We don't have the money worries that we once had. Things were looking good. And so far, on the park anyway, it's been a disaster.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned there the lack of progress. I'll be honest with you, Colin. Everything that I'm watching at the moment says that it's regressing.
Yeah.
And I made mention, and if anyone wants to listen to these pods from the last kind of 2 or 3 weeks ago, I've tried to be fair, and I've tried to be somewhat bipartisan in terms of I understand that people didn't want Russell Martin, but my counter argument to that was, if you don't want Russell Martin, who do you want and why? And I tried to remove the kind of noise of social media in my head, because I think that in the modern day, once you've publicly stated a position, it's a harder thing to do, to say, do you know what, I got it wrong, and therefore I'm happy to eat a bit of humble pie. What you prefer to do is double down on that. And a few weeks ago, I was one of those people saying, I do understand why people do that, because again, like you say, I think it's a modern day culture. But what you have to be able to do is, when you are wrong, is just say you're wrong. And for the guys who didn't want Russell Martin, said from the outset, he's not the guy for us, then the evidence for a counter argument has been growing less and less with every game. There's been some degree of success in terms of navigating through the first 2 rounds of the Champions League qualifiers, Panathinaikos, Pilsen, you mentioned there, and that within their own remit, that's fine, because there are definitely some elements that you can look to say, like, this team can be successful. However, they have been the absolute minority moments against the majority of performances, which fundamentally now have not been good enough. I'll state it now, because I'm exactly the same as you. Russell Martin, by the time of this going live, I hope is no longer the Rangers manager, because there's too many things at the moment which he can have a degree of control over. I'm not saying he's in complete control of them, but I mentioned this before, I dislike the way that it feels like as if he's projecting some of that onto the group of players. He is right to mention that, but even in his post-match comments tonight, there's talk about a lack of harmony. There's a lack of togetherness. And I think he's fueled some of that, Colin. I really do, by some of his comments that he's made previously around egos, players not looking like they want to be committed, how players want to be able to get involved, whether or not players want to go or not. I understand all of that. This is a football club that has to be able to do transfer dealings. He has been supported, as far as I'm concerned, by the board and by Kevin Thelwell in terms of some of the targets that he wanted. I don't think those targets that he's been able to acquire have done well enough for quite a number of them. There are some that I think right now it's still too early to judge. But the other control element, which I think he has to have in here as well, is I hoped that if he was going to change anything in order to see some progress, that he would revisit his original strategy and go, although I want to implement a system and a blueprint that I believe can work, I either A, don't have the players that can fulfill it at the moment, or B, I am not coaching them in a way that they need to be able to understand to implement that system. Therefore, I need to change my approach. And he hasn't done any of that. And whilst I pay very little heed to what's said within post-match comments and pre-match, press conferences and all the rest of it, I think what I hear a lot from the Rangers fans at the moment and guys I talk to and stuff is that there's a degree of arrogance in the way he projects himself, which is entirely misplaced. He has not earned that. We're not talking about a guy who's got a, storied tenure in football management that can come in and say, I know this will work. And once I can get the players to do it, then I know that it'll fit. Right now, he has not got a leg to stand on. And although we'll talk a little bit more about the hierarchy in just a moment, what stuns me is this idea of a Rangers team that can get weaker and weaker and more vulnerable as time passes. He's not entirely to blame for that, because I do want to talk about the players also. But Russell Martin now has completely changed my opinion of him in terms of whether or not he has any degree of any degree of humiliation in terms of that self-effacing. I know I've got this wrong. I need to change it.
Yeah, so I watched his post-match interview similar to yourself, and I was quite, even though he is pretty stick-fast in what he does, and he comes across the same way pretty much all the time. He's had a lot of jibes, but he's a LinkedIn manager and all this sort of stuff with the way he talks, or daddy of a CEO type stuff, the way he talks and stuff. No, he doesn't talk like a football manager. He talks like a bullshitter you come across in your work at times. I did think you would see more humility tonight. I did think you'd maybe see the hands up tonight and stuff like that, but there just wasn't enough of that to come out of that game tonight and talk about still having the confidence of the chief exec and the director of football, and to talk about not having to go and win on Sunday to secure his job and all that sort of stuff. I mean, in some ways, it's supreme levels of confidence that I bloody wish I had, Cammy. But in other ways, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And you know what? Rangers supporters won't fall for it. We're too long in the tooth. We've been through far too much. We can't be bullshitted. We've been through that. We've dealt with that. We've been bullshitted by the best in the past. We're not going to be bullshitted by the likes of Russell Martin. And it taken absolutely no joy in any of this. I was behind the appointment. I wanted it to work. I was behind the idea of the system. I was behind the idea of giving somebody a decent period of time to make the changes that were necessary. And I'm still behind that. That's what we're going to have to do, Cammy. Whoever does come in and replace Russell Martin, and somebody's going to have to, they're going to have to quickly. That person isn't going to come in with a magic wand and just fix things overnight either, because it can't be fixed like that. This is a couple of windows. This is a long-term thing to get us back to where we need to be. So patience will need to be given, and fans will need to understand that. And I'd be looking for somebody from the top levels of the club to actually set out exactly what those expectations of the new manager are, and put some timescales in place and give us an idea of kind of what we're thinking of doing and how we're going to do it. But we need somebody that's going to come in and actually show us from the start they've got something about them, shows that they're actually capable of getting us back to where we should be. And despite all the buzzwords, despite all the fancy chat, despite all the ideologies and everything else, Russell Martin hasn't been able to do that. He's not been able to charm anybody. And when you come in as a guy who wasn't a particularly fan favourite appointment, when you're somebody who a lot of fans wanted different people to come in and get the job, you can't. It cuts into that limited time you've got to impress people right away. He didn't do it, and now he has to go.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, listen, it's fair. I still, and listen, maybe this is just the eternal optimist in me, but I still believe that there were Rangers fans who say, I didn't want him from the outset, but I do want him to succeed.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I totally agree with you. Yeah, people that didn't want him still wanted us to succeed, because the good of Rangers is better than I told you I was right. I'd like to think for the vast majority of people. But I do think when you come in and you're not your first choice, your patience levels are shorter, and it's easier to say, I knew this wouldn't work, and give up quicker. And I think a lot of people did give up really quickly. We dropped points in the opening 2 games of the season. We did okay in Europe, then we dropped points domestically again. And over the course of a season, those results against those teams aren't abnormal. We drop points to teams like that all the time, but to do it all so quickly, all at once, and to kind of shoot the season before it even really started, the patience levels go at that point.
Yeah, and listen, you're right, because when we spoke after Fir Park, I said at the time, I was like, it needs to improve, it needs to get better, but it's the first game of the season, and I'm willing to give it a little bit of time to be able to try and bed in and see what we can do. But as we've discussed, it hasn't got better. The European performances are an anomaly. We probably should have been put out against Panathinaikos because they had plenty of chances. Pilsen wasn't much to them, but I kind of expected that. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, Bruges are not a good side. They're a good side, but they're not the best side that we've played and beaten.
No, we made it to look
and,
really.
and ultimately, when we go into these qualifiers, and again, I understand it, and I want to paint it all in a degree of parity. It's very, very early in terms of when we are looking to bring players in, get them into the team, get them into understanding that actually these games are massive because of the financial incentive at the end of that rainbow. Again, I understand all of that. But at the same point, there has been zero incremental improvement to say that, which is why we can call it a regression, because the basic errors that we see from this Rangers side, this idea of constantly maintaining the ball in our first third, so being able to play around the back five, the back six, does nothing to be able to try and penetrate opponents. And when Rangers do get a bloody nose, so again, like I say, the Motherwell equaliser to name but one, you don't have a response to that, because now all of a sudden you're having to inject a degree of urgency, which you don't think your team should have from the first minute. So therefore, how are they going to find it in the 80th minute? It doesn't exist. Well, we will circle back to Russell Martin, but I cannot fail to talk about the players tonight, Colin. The only person who will be exempt from this criticism is going to be Jack Butland.
Yes.
And Jack Butland, for me, has been our best player so far this season. And I hate saying that, because for me, successful Rangers teams very rarely ever turn around and say, well, our goalkeeper has been called upon time after time after time, and in some instances kept us in the game. But yet again, for me, Jack Butland and probably his goal frame stopped that from going into double figures tonight. You absolutely hit the nail on the head with Max Aarons. That was a horrendous decision in terms of the red card. He absolutely wanted out of that arena as soon as he possibly could, and that gave him a great opportunity to do so. If Max Aarons was 20 years old, then I would understand the pressure that's been put on him, having to get put across the left back, having to effectively come in to replace the club captain, or a very popular figure within the playing squad. I understand all of that, but to come out with the performance that he has done, and he hasn't had great games in the build up to this already, was atrocious. There are players, and again, you can go back and listen to the tape because we've said it plenty of times already. There are players who are very, very comfortable being able to play easy balls wherever those balls are available to them. And they have such stage fright whenever they feel that they have to be able to try and get that ball forward. It just simply is non-existent. And for me, it wouldn't surprise me. It genuinely wouldn't surprise me if by the time that this comes out and you guys are all listening to it, that if Rangers do have another manager, that we all of a sudden get an uplift. Because that team in Belgium tonight absolutely stunk of a team that have just papped the manager off. They have completely disengaged with the managerial instruction. And right now, it's for them, I think, Colin, it just feels a lot like self-preservation. As long as I don't make too much of a mistake and I don't cause a massive fuck up, then I'm perfectly happy to just phone it in. And when you're in a 40 to 50 to 60 million pound game and you need to get a result and you need to be able to show that professionalism, then you're left wanting. And I don't want to focus on Celtic too much because I don't really want to. But what I will say is, having watched some of their game on Tuesday evening, what you saw from their opponents, the massive, massive underdogs, were guys who were willing to fight and scrap and run and cover and really put themselves out there. And they went on for an additional 30 minutes and they still had enough belief in themselves to get through a penalty shootout. If anything, they have absolutely put a Rangers team to shame with their use of application, because it's night and day. These players were just very, very comfortable just making sure they never went above a certain level. And that, for me, is unforgivable.
Yeah, it's unforgivable. And we've spoke a lot about the manager, and the manager's definitely at fault, and the manager does need to go. But these players have also got questions to answer, many of them. You're right in what you say about a new manager coming in and suddenly some of these players suddenly looking quite good again, because I actually think we recruited quite well this summer, Cammy, in terms of who we recruited. I think there's a number of players in that squad that I think could go on and do well for us and become good players. The issue I've got is probably the age of the recruitment that we've done this season. We've signed a lot of youngsters and we haven't got a lot of experience. The experience that we do have in the team is legacy players, guys like Tav, who have been in and out of the team, guys like Suter, who shouldn't be in the team, and there's not a whole lot there. Jack Butland, who, fair play, Jack Butland's been fine this season, had his issues last season, obviously, but he hasn't really put a foot wrong this year, which kudos to him because he is playing a really unnatural role to him as a Russell Martin goalkeeper as well. It doesn't come naturally to him coming out, trying to be a bit of a sweeper at times and stuff. He can't do it, but he's trying, and he's still pulling out fantastic saves on a match-by-match basis. We need to bring in some experienced players to help this squad and to get this squad through this season, to help them develop, because you saw tonight that there's just nobody there that can grab two or three of the other players and tell them to get themselves sorted, to help them kind of grab the game by the scruff of the neck and get them through these games, talk them through these games. We saw the goals that we lost tonight. We saw defenders just not communicating with each other, defenders not in the right places, defenders making the same mistakes again and again and again, and there's nobody in that team, there's nobody in the spine of that team to actually sort it out and fix it. So, yeah, we need to use the next 5 days or whatever it is that's left of this window until Monday to go and find some experience. The defender, Cody, who we lost out to Wrexham, I believe, I think is a big loss in terms of what he would have come in and done for that defence and for his experience levels and things like that. That's the sort of thing we need to be looking for. Guys that have been there, done it, are not going to be overwhelmed by the occasion, are not going to be overwhelmed by Scottish football, not going to be overwhelmed by playing for Rangers, and can come in and make a big difference. I will caveat though, Cammy, with another fear that I've got, is that there isn't a lot of those experienced players around. There's not a lot of them that are available and within our sort of price budget or wage budget sort of thing. And you know what? See, the ones that are available, how keen do you think they're going to be to come and join this basket case after that tonight and potentially losing a manager in August and everything else that goes with it? So the whole thing worries me completely because we need to find experience to fix this squad between now and Monday, and I don't think it's going to be an easy thing to do.
It won't, and I mean, you're right in terms of obviously missed out on Cody, but we also did get Joe Rothwell, and he has been a cataclysmic failure in terms of what he's doing now. I said a while ago, I actually think that Rothwell that can play better than he has. I think he's got more capability he has at the moment. He is getting plenty of chances from the manager because quite clearly he trusts him, and that's grand. But Russell Martin tried that with Kieran Dowell, and obviously that experiment is now over. And so that's fine. But then you've also got guys in there who are young and inspiring. Now you're talking about, the game this evening. He drops Tav, he drops Nico Raskan. There's rumours abound that those two may be going out the door. How true that is, I don't know, because I've kind of just detached a bit from the rumour mill that goes around on Twitter and forums and WhatsApp and all the rest of it. So you genuinely don't know. But you do have guys in there who have performed in leadership responsibilities. They do not want to do it in this current mess. And you are going to have to properly sell the club now on players who you're looking to be able to try and bring in. Now, I actually believe that if you do have players who look at where Rangers are at the moment, we're obviously getting into a Europa League campaign. The league is nowhere near done. Maybe a win against Celtic on Sunday changes that optic. There's I suppose really what I'm trying to say is there is a catalyst that can build momentum and we can take it from there, which is what obviously we're all hoping for. So things can change is probably the easiest way I can say that. The issue we have at the moment just now is that I don't believe that any of those players really believe that those changes can come whilst Russell Martin is manager.
No.
Which is why it wouldn't surprise me that if there are changes between now and Sunday, that you would see an upturn in terms of energy and performance and risk and all of those things that have been sorely lacking from the beginning of the season. And what those players need to do, and if it is going to have to if it is going to take 1, 2, 3 players to be able to try and come in, they would have to have brass balls, Colin, which I think is the kind of point you're making, because those guys would have to walk into a dressing room and say, I am not here to be part of a losing team. I'm not here to be part of a victimhood. I am not here just simply to make sure that we get a 6 or a 7 out of 10 performance and fundamentally make games far harder than they need to be. If you guys are here for that, that's fine. But as far as I'm concerned, we'll start playing youngsters, we'll start playing guys who might not be first team starters at the moment, but if they've got that enthusiasm and they've got that energy and that desire, then right now we need that more than technical ability as things stand, because we are beating ourselves at the moment. This tippy-tappy passing at the back, inviting pressure on ourselves, not willing to get the ball forward to anyone within the front three. It's so conservative and bland and dull that, frankly, no one enjoys, I think, going to Ibrox at the moment, because they don't expect to be able to go and see any kind of degree of fast-flowing, exciting football. And it staggers me as to why we cannot seem to be able to fix that problem, which is what I said at the top of the show. It's very much this idea of Russell Martin is, you're either on the bus and the bus is right, and if you're not on the bus, then you can leave. But the buses are careering off a cliff at the moment.
Yeah. We need, it all comes down to finding this experience and come in and make that impact. If you look back at, we were all lucky enough to spend some time through the podcast with John Brown recently, Cammy, you in particular. He spoke about a couple of seasons ago the difference that Leon Balogun made coming into the squad. Now, I'm not saying we go and sign Leon Balogun, that's not what I'm saying at all, but somebody of that stature that's been around the block, they're a decent age, and they can come in and they know what it's all about, they know what they need to do, they know how to look after the defence. If you look back to when Stephen Davis came back to the club for his second time, the impact he had on our team. Even look at Jermaine Defoe, Cammy. Jermaine Defoe came to us at the very tail end of his career. He was never our first 11 player, but the impact he had around that squad, around the team, the fans buy into him, people looked up to him, had so much respect for him. That's the level we need to find 2, 3, 4 people kind of that can do the impact that those 3 players had for us in the past. That's what we need to kind of come in and help these young guys to become the good Rangers players that we think they all can be. But at the minute, we're actually doing them a disservice by throwing in a defence made up of 3 loans. Lyle Cameron, Connor Barron getting put into games, players that we brought on Finlay Curtis tonight. With what was he going to get out of that game tonight other than a bad night? We need to bring guys in that can help these young guys and help them become the Rangers because we all want them to be, and players that we can get behind as fans as well. And those 3 are kind of the examples that come immediate to mind for me for the sort of impact, the sort of impetus and the sort of people that would need to go in and make a difference. That's the kind of guys we need to go out and find in the next 5 days, and good luck doing it.
Well, there has been a lot of talk, Colin. I do want to talk about this because I think it's been an interesting discussion that I've seen. That Russell Martin needs to go, Kevin Thelwell needs to go, Patrick Stewart needs to go, and I think that smacks of me of that flavour of scorched earth, because we're pissed off and we've not seen the success that we want, etc. Now, I think that the best thing that Patrick Stewart and Kevin Thelwell can actually do is do a bit of a mea culpa and just say, listen, do you know what? We got it wrong. We're replacing the manager. And I genuinely believe this, because I said this when we were in the managerial hunt for Russell Martin, was whether or not we were getting to a conversation of it's Russell Martin or David Ancelotti, then as far as I'm concerned, both have got pros and cons. Neither of them have got the weight behind them to say that they are an out-and-out preferential candidate for the support. Is what I mean by that, not necessarily just the recruitment coming into the club.
Yeah.
So Thelwell for me has been in the role now less than 4 months. So I think the idea of getting rid of him at the moment doesn't work. I've tried to be a proponent of this idea of the markets that we're shopping in, because I do believe that there is value down south. We're obviously an incredibly attractive option because only a few hundred miles north of the border, you can come and play serious European level football. You can make title challenges. You can do X, Y, and Z. Best respect to those clubs, but you're not doing that at like a Bournemouth and a Plymouth and all of these kind of clubs as well. But it doesn't mean that you don't have talent there. So I may very well be proven wrong within that. So again, I'll hold my hands up to it now if so. But there are players in there of value that you can look to be able to bring in, and as I say, move you up a notch, be able to move you up a level. As you've just mentioned, there can be players who are maybe kind of more experienced and maybe at the latter end of their career, they can come in to be able to lift that. So Thelwell for me still has room to manoeuvre. Patrick Stewart, I think, again, appointed in December, so he hasn't served a great deal of time within the role. So I'm not necessarily saying that the two of them deserve a pass. What I'm saying is that they need to be able to say, look, we've got this wrong. We acknowledge that we've got it wrong. And as a result of that, we are going to fix things. Because this, as we've just both said, cannot continue. For me, but within that point, and this is kind of where I suppose I'm kind of getting to, that you're either serious about what you're looking to do here and you have to accept those mistakes, no matter how early on it appears in the calendar, and fix it before you really have the rot set in. And that's when you're able to try and turn it around. And if I was Kevin Thelwell, do you know what I would do? If I was Kevin Thelwell, I would go to the training session on Friday. I would go to the training session because I'd want to see the reaction. And that would probably give me a really key indicator of who wants to be here. Because these players, as far as I'm concerned right now, know that if they are at Rangers come the end of September, they probably will have outlasted the manager. So are you just biding your time when you're doing your training sessions? Are you just making sure it's nice and easy and nice and comfortable on you like you are when you're on the pitch? If that's the case, then I would immediately question how committed you genuinely are to this club, because now what you're simply doing is biding time until there's a change above you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's definitely something to observe by going to training and seeing that. I'm not in the frame of mind where I want to force out Patrick Stewart or Kevin Farewell either, Cammy. I think it's too early to be doing that. What I will say about the two of them, though, is that I want to hear more from them. I think they've been far too quiet. We employed a head coach, not a manager. Russell Martin, his job was to coach the team and to coach through the matches. That is his remit. He has been the one that's been at every press conference. He's been the one that's been getting asked all these questions at press conferences. He's got to keep saying that he's not his job. He's not here to talk about that. Russell Martin's also had a pretty tough time. It's not went well for him in the first couple of months, and it's looking like it's going to come to an end. At no point during this 6-8 weeks or so under Russell Martin has the director of football, has the chief executive come out and offered them any sort of support. They've never come out and said, listen, we've got a plan here. We're sticking to this structure. This is what we're trying to do. We hope to achieve X, Y, and Z by this point in the calendar, or here, or here, or here, or whatever it might be. They've been far too quiet. So I would like to hear more from them going forward, and actually hear what they're doing on a day-to-day basis and hear what their input is, because it's too much. It's not enough just getting a paragraph from them on the website when we sign somebody. In terms of the owners, Cammy, I think there's questions now with the owners as well. We spent some time through the podcast with Andrew Kavanagh a couple of months ago when he was formally taking over the club. He said an interesting thing to me, which was that they were going to be quite quiet. They would be in the background working. However, you would hear from them if things were wrong, and you wouldn't really want to hear from them, because if you do hear from them, it means things aren't working well. Things aren't working well now. And I think it's time we hear from them. They need to start stand up and be counted and do something now as well. They're all going to be here on Sunday for this Celtic game, Cammy. This will be in their calendar as a fixture where they'll want to be here. I would imagine they'll invited people here. They'll have guests over at that game with them and stuff as well. And I don't think it's going to be a particularly nice experience for them. Not mainly through them. I don't think MD's at the stage yet where they're angry with the owners. We're angry with the manager. We're angry with the players. But we're now at a stage where I think the whole support are pretty much now united, and that the manager has to go and a change has to happen. If that doesn't happen quickly enough, then that kind of ire and that anger will go towards the owners and the people that can actually make this happen. So I think Sunday could be quite an interesting eye-opener for the owners in terms of, they spoke at it wasn't an EGM, it was like an EGM we had a couple of months ago, and they said that was an eye-opener to them, actually meeting Rangers fans, talking to them and getting an idea of the scrutiny levels and the demands and everything that being involved in this club has. Sunday will be a massive eye-opener for them in that path, in that way as well. I think if the manager is still in place and the game doesn't go well, even in the build-up to the game, I think it's going to be loud, noisy, unhappy, pretty toxic in a lot of ways. and I don't think they'll enjoy it. And if I've not done anything by Sunday, that could be the straw that breaks the camel's back as far as they're concerned.
Well, I mean, yeah, let's talk a little bit about Sunday then, because, as I say, I think we've done pretty well to be pretty tempered about, what we've seen thus far. But I don't believe that there's such a thing as a meaningless Old Firm league opener, Colin. This one will be very interesting in terms of the dynamic. Again, there's been a bit of a knee-jerk reaction from some of the guys that I've spoken to within a Rangers fan base to say, Rangers have just given Celtic their team talk to be able to recover from their own humiliation in Europe. I don't really kind of buy any of that. I don't really care what they do in terms of their preparation towards a game. What I care about is how much that we can assess the reaction from what's happened midweek from ourselves. And by that, what I mean is, I don't believe, listen, the league is not done, right? So let's just not be ridiculous about it. Christ, we're only 3 games into it. There's obviously a 6-point difference between ourselves and Celtic at the moment, but we need to be able to get a win against them, which stops this cloud, right? It'll try and part the ways a little bit. But now we're in this juxtaposition of we can either keep Russell Martin in situ, which, by the way, I think gut feeling, I think may very well happen, because I think that at the very least we'll want to get the Celtic game out of the way, and then we'll head into the international break and then assess our options. If it's another defeat, then I think the writing's on the wall as it is, as you and I have spoken about. But Christ, now what we're doing is we're absolutely spray painting on there. If he loses to Celtic on Sunday, and I think the board, as you rightly say, they will hear the anger. They will absolutely hear that voice. But the flip side of that coin is that if he beats Celtic, then I think he takes that as, right, well, this is the turning point. This is us now being able to get back into it. And I genuinely have not spoken to a single Rangers fan across the course of the last week, looking forward to the Old Firm game, that has said, if he beats Celtic, then I'll give him more time. I haven't spoken to a single person who has said that, even the guys who were very pro Russell Martin, because I do not think it changes the picture long term if Russell Martin stays where he is, because you've got that situation now where, you by all means you could certainly go ahead and get a result against Celtic, but then when you look further forward and you look towards the Hearts game after the international break, there's no guarantees. And these players to me smack right now of, if they're going to pick and choose what games they want to turn up in, and Old Firm games shoot you in for them. How did they do it against Hearts, and how did they do it against Hibs, Livy away, all of that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's actually a concern of mine, actually. It's not a concern that we go and beat Celtic. Obviously, I'd love to go and beat Celtic. And you know what? We probably are capable of doing it, because they're in a bad way as well. This Old Firm game on Sunday is the equivalent of 2 bald guys arguing over a comb at this point. I think they're both that bad. But yeah, I can see a situation where we win this game and our owners sit down and look and they say, right, so we've just beaten Celtic. We're only 3 points behind in the league. We've got European group qualification. We're going to be playing European games now until at least the end of January. And we've had a decent window in terms of, we've sold Jeffy for a decent bit of money. We've sold Egeman for a bit of money. We might sell some more people between now and then for a bit of money. And they could actually sit and look at this all and think, you know what, things are okay, things are going on track. But you're so right, Cammy, it's papering over cracks. It's not going to change anything. The issue, excuse me, the issues we've had in the games already will still be there as soon as we play game teams that aren't Celtic. And it will, like I say, paper over a crack, but it won't fix anything in long term. I think we already know now, and even me, who was as patient as any, I think, in terms of giving him time, it's not going to work. Russell Martin isn't the man for Rangers. His type of football, or his ability to create his type of football, just isn't going to work for this club with these players in a quick enough timescale. And yeah, it does worry me a little bit that things might look all rosy in the garden come Sunday should we get 3 points. And as much as I'll love getting 3 points against Celtic, beating Celtic, and I'll thoroughly enjoy it at the time, if it leads to us keeping the manager on longer, it's almost taking 1 step forward to take 2 steps back.
Yeah, I think it's borderline counterproductive. Yeah. So if you wanted to, and I mentioned it before, but if you wanted to use that catalyst to be able to build momentum, the best thing that can happen at Rangers at the moment just now is Russell Martin goes, I and please, and I wouldn't dare ask you to do this, Colin, and put it on the spot. I have no idea who would replace him. No idea whatsoever who would take that team on Sunday if that's the decision that was made. But right now, it almost feels like being the manager is going to be a bigger uplift for the fans and being able to beat Celtic and keeping them. And that's where we are, right? That's what happened. So I get it and I get the conflict. But the simple fact is, what we need to be able to see from the players, irrespective of who the manager is, that if they are genuinely serious about being able to mount any form of league campaign and not declare by November, December, that they need to look at how they approach this game and how seriously they're willing to take it. And when I say seriously, I don't mean turning up and being fit and, making sure that you've got your name in the team sheet. The only person right now who walks into that team on a merit basis is Jack Butland. Everyone else, as far as I'm concerned, absolutely has a question mark over them. And right now, as things stand, I couldn't tell you what our best formation would be within that, because it's not the level needed has not been applied by the players. So as much as I think that I could come up with a starting 11, how that starting 11 perform will be, I think, predicated by who's sitting in the dugout at the time as well. So if these players are going to get that uplift from to now, then we'll take that short-term pain. But I absolutely cannot let the players off the hook for what's happening at the moment. Again, save Jack Butland.
No, I totally agree. No, absolutely not. And once we've all calmed down a bit after this result, and maybe once the manager does move on and he's replaced, we'll be a bit more level-headed and not be so... Everybody's primary focus now is we need to change the manager, we need to get somebody else in, we need a new head coach, etc. There'll be time to actually look at some of these players and look at some of these performances and identify which ones just shouldn't be here, which ones have burnt their bridges, and there'll be quite a few of them, I think, Cammy. You said you wouldn't put me under the spot in terms of asking who we go and get as a new manager. I'm glad, because it's a bloody difficult question. It really, really is. The only thing I know about it is that we need to find someone that can come in, and I don't think we're going to rip up the rule book either here. I think these new owners want us to play a certain type of football. I think they want a head coach type position, somebody that's going to come in and be the head coach and just look after the football side of things in terms of coaching. So it'll be somebody like Russell Martin in terms of ideology, I think, and in terms of what they want to do. Hopefully it's going to be somebody that's better at actually implementing it. It needs to be somebody that's a stronger person. It needs to be somebody who the fans can get behind. The ideal type of person, and it won't be this person because he's very much a manager, is Steven Gerrard. It's somebody like that, Cammy. I don't want Steven Gerrard to come back. I don't actually think this board would go back the way with that sort of appointment, but I think it needs to be somebody with that sort of vibe, that sort of aura that can come in, demand respect. The fans are going to take to straight away, and the fans are going to have the patience to get behind. So there you go. Dead simple for the guys. Go out and find a head coach that plays the type of football you want, who has got the vibes of Steven Gerrard.
Yeah, 100%. And it has to be someone who, for me at least, comes in and says, you have not been performing well enough, and I'm not here to create a safe space. Yep. And if my intention here is to build a successful team, and if you're not 110% committed to that, then you won't be playing, and it's that simple. And you have to now make a conscious decision about what happens. If someone comes in and mollycoddles the players, and again, like you say, it's a bit more the arm around the shoulder and all the rest of it, then I don't think these players will give that manager a decent level of service in the long term. No. So again, this is where it's about the players taking accountability. And if that's internally in terms of, across the squad from a man-on-man, intra-personality basis of saying, I need to hold you to account like you need to hold me to account, and we need to raise our levels here. They can do that themselves. But fundamentally, the management group, once they are there in place, cannot come in and say, listen, boys, don't worry about it. Everything's going to be okay now. This is what has to happen. Because I fundamentally don't believe that the core nucleus of this group of players will react to that well long term. They probably will, because we've seen enough of them being able to get a new manager bounce. But that is not what this group of players needs right now, in my opinion.
No, and we don't need a new manager bounce either, Cammy. We need a new manager foundation. and it needs to be more than a bounce. It needs to be something that you can actually hang your hat on, and you can build, you can grow, and you can nurture. Somebody coming in and doing well for 2 or 3 months, us all getting ahead of ourselves, and then the same problems arising by the time Christmas comes around just won't do. We've been round this merry-go-round far too many times. We need to get this next one right. We need to support them in terms of recruitment. We need to support them in the right levels of recruitment, and we need to support them as a fan base by being a little bit more patient and getting behind them. And they need to earn that patience from us by showing us what they're capable of doing, letting us see that there's a plan in place, letting us see that there's something good happening, even if it's just little shoots of it to start with, just incremental gains. And that's how you keep everybody happy, and you get the time to actually make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, folks, by the time that you come to listen to this, if there already has been a managerial change, then I'll apologise on behalf of Colin and myself. I hope that is what happens, but we will have to wait and see. David will be back with you on Monday to unpack this weekend's Old Firm game. And if you want to get all of the build up to it, then why not join us on our Patreon site, which is patreon.com/Heartman. Thank you to Mike Lee and Paul Myers. Thank you all for listening. I hope that you've found it a little bit cathartic. I'm still angry. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But one man who has been able to reduce my anger levels with his soothing tones is my superb guest. And thank you for coming on to do this. And I'm going to be a little touch serious here as well, Colin. These are tough shows to do, because you want to come on and you want to rant and you want to rave. And I try and be slightly, low key in terms of I don't want it to be an immediate reaction. We have post-match pods on our Patreon site for exactly that purpose. But you stepped up to the plate this week, buddy, and thank you so much for coming on. It's very much appreciated.
Oh, no, it's absolutely fine, mate. Happy to come on. Just invite me on some week when we've done something good. Get me on, right?
I would, but that's the weeks when I've got your mum lined up to come on. So Mrs. McMillan will be lined up for next week's when we're obviously talking about the win over Celtic.
That's it. Okay, fine. That's okay.
Perfect. Thank you all for listening. David will be back with you on Monday. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.